the movement away from the heroic voice of ancient poetry and back again. We concluded part 1 by noting the distinction that John Dryden, the English Neo-Augustan poet who wrote at the time of the English Restoration, made between ancient and modern satire. This distinction is set forth in his prefatory and dedicatory piece to the satires of Decimus Junius Juvenalis, translated into English verse together with the satires of Aulus Persius Flaccus. Dryden suggests that modern satire had moved away from an heroic epic voice to one that is sophisticated and subtle, capitalizing on amusing incongruities and learned allusions, suitable for representing the bureaucratically corrupt and ethically diverse society that urbanity cultivates. Poetry as precious, well-wrought amusement. The development of poetry in the context of the subjective urban milieu of modernity in this model excludes the dross of corruption apparent in the topos of the ancient poems in favor of making poems that are precious, well-wrought objects designed to simply amuse. To the extent that Dryden delineates this emergent distinction, he captures a novel vital language of analysis. The classical terrain. In this way, the cultures of the continental modernity of the Restoration era of European nations toward the Atlantic are analytically differentiated by Dryden, as a matter of the obvious, from the classical traditions of Athens of the 5th century BC and its surrounding Attic environs, the Alexandrian civilization of the 3rd century BC, and the Roman civilization of the turn of the millennia centered on the Italian peninsula, including its influences to the north. Thus Dryden writes, "Before the use of the lodestone, or knowledge of the compass, I was sailing in a vast ocean, without other help than the pole star of the ancients and the rules of the French stage amongst the moderns, which are extremely different from ours by reason of their opposite taste." The invocation of the classical heroic voice. It is Dryden's invocation of the classical Augustan voice that frames the Restoration satire that has become known as Neo-Augustan. Hence the Neo-Augustan satirists, rather than enjoying a poetry of manners, insisted on developing an English heroic verse, choosing to be specific in their ridicule, and setting the geography of their moral universe beyond the merely allegorical or mundanely typological. In such a way Dryden invoked a newfound millennialism. The timeless conversation. It is by way, then, of a timeless conversation of poets in the spiritual society of influences, precedents, and allusions, that satire generically considered emerges as a critical term applicable to cultivating insight into the immortal qualities of literature. Satire, accordingly, as poetry, is reflective verse designed to specify folly by representing it against a backdrop of the commendable. Behold satire satirized. The Apotheosis of Humboldt being, more precisely considered, is a novel form of satire synthesizing the modern and epic forms Dryden delineates. It is modern in the sense that it is contemporary only, for its aim is beyond mere amusement. Its subject matter presents a foundational sketch of certain aspects of the milieu of the American Revolution. It examines, for instance, the life of Rudolf Rusp, the scandalized German author and scholar, who is said to be the author of the profoundly facetious The Surprising Adventures of Baron Munchausen, anonymously published in 1785 and dedicated to the British Parliament. The Apotheosis of Humboldt is available for you to purchase in the link in the description. Moreover, it shall be an ongoing focal point of our inquiry. Look for the next upcoming part of this series.